This is still Steam's most popular GPU, but is it any good in 2022? Well, I don't actually know. Should we give it a try in some popular games? Yes. Yes, we should. Oh, hi there. Welcome to the TechDweeb show. It's a bunch of nonsense and tomfoolery, so if you came here for a serious review and technical analysis of the GTX 1060, then you've come to the wrong place, my friend. Now with that out of the way, on to the tomfoolery, me hearties. Hey guys, it looks like you're having a nice time hanging out. Can I hang out with you? No way, dweeb. Cool kids only. You ain't got a baseball cap that says the name of our local sports team. Until you got what the cool kids got, you ain't cool. Oh, hi guys. I got a baseball cap with our local sports team on it. Can I play with you now? Well, no, obviously. You ain't got a fidget spinner. All the cool kids got fidget spinners. That's how we know you ain't cool, dweeb. I got a fidget spinner now. Does that mean I'm cool? No, you ain't cool. Just cause you got some baseball cap with our local sports team and a dollar store fidget spinner, our parents are all divorced. We don't want to hang out with uncool kids whose parents love each other.
Is that all you got? We can't all eat cigarettes and beer, you know? What are we supposed to do for food? Oh, I gotta listen to you complaining and our freaking dweeb kid told me about Game Boys again. I'm freaking out of here. How dare you?
Oh, that's it.
Get out, you piece of garbage.
Yeah, have a nice life.
Hey guys, great news. My parents got divorced. Am I cool now?
Not yet, but almost. You got the cap, you got the fidget spinner, you got the broken family. You almost got all the stuff that we got, but you ain't got the GTX 1060. That's the GPU everyone uses, you know. Until you got what we got, you ain't got the stuff to be cool, dweeb. Yeah, dweeb.
Aw, this sucks. I'll never be cool if I don't get a GTX 1060.
And that brings us to I finally got one of these. This is a GTX 1060, 6GB. Oh, there you have it, little TechDweeb. You can finally rest easy knowing that big grown-up adult TechDweeb has finally got his hands on the most popular GPU of the last 6 years. Probably the most popular GPU of all time, to be honest. And it's still the most popular GPU according to the Steam hardware survey. As for this actual GTX 1060, now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, that looks like the cheesiest, cheapest, and possibly fake GTX 1060 that I've ever seen. And you'd be right, but man, this thing is ugly. This looks like I'm gonna set my computer on exploding. I thought the same thing, but let me assure you that this is the real deal. I found it on Facebook Marketplace, so that's how you know it's legit. Nobody on Facebook would ever try to sell something fake or broken or otherwise not worthwhile to people in their local community to make a quick buck. Certainly not. So let's not waste any time here and pop it into our test system. This is my little ITX PC running a 12400F that I built in a recent video. There's a link to that in the description below if you want to know more about this setup. So with that out of the way, without further delay, let's play some games on the GTX 1060 in 2022 on a Friday afternoon while drinking a diet root beer. Here we are, running the latest NVIDIA drivers, as you can see. In GPU-Z, we can see that we're fully detected and legit. 16GB of GDDR5 VRAM, 1700 MHz boost clock, and 1280 shaders, 192-bit memory bus. See, I told you Facebook wouldn't let us down. I think this is just a weird, ugly OEM version of the 1060. Probably from a Dell or HP pre-built, to be honest. Whatever, it doesn't matter how ugly it is if it can game, right? So, let's see weeby what it can do. I should mention that I'm recording the gameplay on the same machine that I'm gaming on using the built-in NVMe encoders on the GTX 1060. Let's start off with GTA 5, our game benchmark standard candle, 1080p with very high settings. Pretty much everything maxed out except for the advanced graphical settings like scaling. At these settings we end up with 75 FPS on average. I accidentally froze the FPS counter on MSI Afterburner when I was recording, so that's why it's not doing anything. Sorry about that. But I always do my benchmark run separately from the gameplay recording, and I got 75 FPS. Pretty good, pretty good. We're at max settings here, so we could obviously lower the settings to get much more FPS. Very solid performance. But this GPU was released in 2016, so we should expect some pretty good performance on older titles. CSGO is another somewhat older title, and it used to get some crazy FPS on this type of GPU, but I feel like more recent updates have borked the performance a bit. As always, MSI Afterburner has problems with the overlay of this game. You have to do some hacky stuff to get it working, so I'm just using Steam's built-in FPS counter. This is running at 1080p, highest possible settings, and we got around 220 FPS on average. That's freaking amazing. You'll get over 200 FPS easy. So if you have a 240Hz monitor or whatever, then yeah, you'll be good to go with a GTX 1060. Let's move on to something more demanding. Here's The Witcher 3, 1080p, medium preset. And we got 78 FPS. In hindsight, I probably should have ran with the high preset and got around 60. The game looks good regardless. This game came out in 2015, which was 1 year before this GPU. I remember when this game was coming out, I was dreaming of running dual GTX 980s in SLI. I had a GTX 660 at the time. I would have killed for this GPU back then. Killed, I tell you! It is running beautifully here on the GTX 1060. No problems at all.
Can you do that? Can you do that?
Here's a game from a year that this GPU was released. Cry Primal. My favorite Far Cry game, because I'm a caveman. 1080p, ultra preset, and I got 62 FPS average. This is a beautiful game. It's an older Far Cry game, and it's running on the older Far Cry 4 engine, I believe, but this is still one of, if not the best looking Far Cry games, in my opinion. It's just beautiful nature as far as the eye could see, tons of grasses and foliage, and this is running with the HD textures, and it's getting 60 plus FPS, which is ideal for a first person game, especially if you're playing with a mouse and keyboard, as I tend to do. Moving along to Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which is my personal favorite benchmark game, I was able to run at 1080p with a high preset, and I got 49 FPS average. That's a great FPS for this game. This is a sightseeing game, and when I play sightseeing games, I usually don't mind sacrificing some FPS to get the games looking really, really good. Yeah, you could probably go with the medium preset or go down to the 90% scale to get that FPS up to 60, but I think 40 to 50 FPS in these third-person action games is just fine. Here's some Red Dead Redemption 2, running at 1080p with the first balance preset. We got 38 FPS. I probably should have enabled Digital Foundry's Xbox One X equivalent settings because they seem to be more well optimized than the in-game settings slider. Still, 38 FPS isn't bad, especially considering how good the game looks. We could definitely lower a few settings to get that FPS up, but I personally have no problem playing like this.
Oh, Bessie, she could... Hey, now that's a real bad move.
Around here, that boy's a real loon.
That rat bastard can go to hell for all I care.
What will be?
Oh, God.
I'm just minding my own business here.
Hitman 3 here. I think this is the first time I've tested this game on my channel. I wanted a bunch of newer games because this GPU has been around for a long time. It's already had lots of time for people to test all those older games. This is running at 1080p with medium settings, and we get 66 FPS average. This looks just awesome, in my opinion. The Hitman series was always a graphically impressive series, especially in the crowd size. This level doesn't have huge crowds, but lots of them do, with hundreds of NPCs on the screen at once. And the Hitman games have never ceased to amaze me that they can run as well as they do, considering how good they look and how many characters are on the screen. Running great and looking great here on the GTX 1060, of course. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is another new game, another game that looks great. Here I'm running at 1080p with the medium preset, but ultra textures. This GPU has 6GB of VRAM, so we could treat ourselves to ultra textures without too much of a performance hit. We ended up getting 58 FPS average by the end of this run. This GPU is super popular for a reason. You know, it's a very capable 1080p gaming GPU, and it can handle older games at max settings or newer games at medium settings and still maintain high FPS, and the games look great. No wonder it stood the test of time for so long.
Share our music with the world. Devote yourselves to godlier activities. You stomp our spirits with your talk of devils.
What about a brand new game? God of War. This game came out earlier this year, and although it was originally on the PS4, the PC version has some enhanced settings that make it look way better than the original. I chose to go with 1080p, medium preset, but I went with quality FSR for an FPS boost. We ended up getting 50 FPS. I don't know how important running at very high FPS is with this game. I know it's a third-person action game, but it's a very skill-centric gameplay loop, and I feel I play better when the FPS doesn't dip too low, but I also like the way the game looks. It's a good sweet spot in my opinion. But you can always lower the graphics down to original quality to get more FPS if you needed it. Elden Ring is another game that came out this year. Very recently, actually. I've made a few videos on this game. With the GTX 1060, we get to run at 1080p at the high preset, and we average 50 FPS. This is definitely a sightseeing game. I'd recommend maxing out the graphical settings as much as you can to get the game looking good. It needs to play good too, obviously. This is another skill-centric gameplay type game, but 50 FPS feels really good. And if it lets the world details look that much better, then sacrificing a little FPS isn't much of a sacrifice at all, actually. And finally, Cyberpunk 2077. You know, I sometimes feel like we won't actually get the game running well on any GPU until it actually becomes 2077. It doesn't run well on most hardware, even by 3080. I'm kind of disappointed at how well the game runs compared to how it looks. Well, here on the GTX 1060, we're running with the medium preset. We get to enable balanced FSR to give us a big boost, and we end up with 57 FPS. FSR or DLSS, some sort of upscaling, is pretty much essential to enjoying this game without lowering the settings to their lowest, and the game really doesn't look great at the low preset. But with all that said, the GTX 1060 is able to play this game, and it looks good at these settings. And we're getting almost 60 FPS. For a 7-year-old GPU, to be holding its own in freaking Cyberpunk, man, I can see why this GPU is so popular now. So, how does it feel gaming on the most popular GPU of the last 6 years, and probably the next 60? Well, it feels pretty darn good, thank you very much. This is still a great GPU. It could shred through older games running at 1080p with high or ultra settings. Newer games, you'll have to turn down the graphics a bit to high or medium or enable scaling, but at least you're able to play at 1080p without scaling in most situations. Even in our most demanding games, we didn't have to sacrifice too much. If you have a 1080p monitor or a TV and you're targeting 60-ish FPS, this GPU is still going strong. You can find these at some really good prices too, now that the GPU bloodbath has come to an end. I found this on Facebook for $200 Canadian, which is like, I don't know, like 150 or 160 USDs, and I've seen it going for even less. I just wanted to get my hands on one to play with, and I'm glad I did, because it's still a great GPU, it's still going strong, and now that I have a GTX 1060, I am finally one of the cool kids. We did it, little buddy. And that brings us to the end. How many of you guys are rocking a GTX 1060? Lots of you, I bet. Give your GPU a shout out in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you're running with. And while you're down there, click the thumbs up button if you like the video, or the thumbs down button if you're not one of the cool kids because you don't have a GTX 1060 or your parents aren't divorced. Subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos. I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.